We do.
But we have the whole back end all set up.
Yep.
We are ready to go.
Okay.
Holly needs the link reset. Brooke, if you could send a meeting invitation to Holly.
I'm here.
She's here.
Oh, okay.
Juliana.
Sorry.
No, we're good. We figured it out. Thank you though.
Excellent.
Okay. So at 2:04 this afternoon on April 4th, 2022, I'm hereby calling the meeting of Mendocino Historical Review Board to order. Planner Giuliana Chair, would you read the participation information for this virtual meeting?
Yes, I can. Just one moment. I'm waiting for the statement to load.
If you're having difficulties, I can go ahead and read that.
If you could, please.
Sure, not a problem. Mendocino Historic Review Board meetings are conducted virtually and not available for in-person public participation pursuant to State Executive Order N-29-20. Meetings are live streamed and available for viewing on the Mendocino County YouTube page at www.youtube.com/Mendocino County Video. In order to minimize risk of exposure during this time of emergency, the public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to PBS, like Planning Building
Services.
Thank you. PBS commissions at mendocinocounty.org, or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made immediately available to the review board, staff, and the general public as they are received and processed by staff and can be viewed as attachments to the meeting agenda. Our request for telecomment must have been received by 10 a.m. this morning. So that brings us to agenda item number 2. Planner Giuliana Cherry, can you do roll call, please?
Certainly. Board Member Madrigal.
Here.
And I understand you might be leaving the meeting around 2:40 today.
Correct. And I will do my best to come back after my appointment.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Saunders.
Here.
Board Member Kapler.
Here.
And Chair Roth.
Present.
So everyone is present.
And our staff, who do we have present today?
Brooke Larson and Juliana Cherry.
Great, thank you so much. We have to do a brief administrative piece, which is discussion and possible action, including adoption of resolution of the Mendocino County Mendocino Historical Review Board finding that state or local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing in connection with public meetings. Hearing's declared open. Does anyone have any questions regarding this routine item?
No.
Seeing none, Giuliana, can you please, I guess we need a motion, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to approve the findings?
I'll make a motion to approve the required resolution.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. So
Okay.
a motion by Holm Kapler, second by Alan Saunders. Can you please take roll?
Sure. So Board Member Madrigal, what is your vote?
Yes.
Board Member Roth?
Yes. Aye.
Board Member Saunders?
Yes.
And Board Member Holm? Kapler.
Kapler, yes.
Sorry. So the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4, determination of legal notice. Has proper notice been established for this meeting?
Yes, it has. We have received a lot of public comment on the subcommittee item.
Great. Hopefully we'll be taking that up before Board Member Madrigal needs to escape. Brings us to item number 5, minutes from the March meeting. Does anyone have any comments, changes on the minutes?
No.
Well, you're going to be surprised. I have a few comments.
Shocked. Please, Home.
It's item 10A, and it's a review board discussion. And I would like to change the first sentence just a little bit. I would like it to say, Vice Chair Kapler described the Blair House as iconic and expressed appreciation for the owner's decision to install wood frame windows and to look into the possibility of retaining the wooden rain gutters. I can repeat that if you need me to do that.
If you could.
Okay. Vice Chair Kapler described the Blair House as iconic and expressed appreciation for the owner's decision to install wood frame windows and to look into the possibility of retaining the wooden rain gutters.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you. Also, in the third sentence, where it talks about, it mentions review board member Saunders supporting the proposal for the metal roof. I would like my name to appear there also. I recall that I also supported the metal roof for the outbuilding.
Okay, all right, I can do that.
Okay, and then under review board action for this item, and also 10B, I noticed that Al Saunders' name is misspelled.
Oh, you're right, sorry.
Yeah, so it's here, and under 10B, under review board action, the same thing.
I didn't spell that.
Thank you so much for that, I apologize.
And finally, under 10C, it's the public comment part. I think there's a word missing at the end. Rick Sachs commented on the proposed, I think, project, the word project.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Okay. Any other comments?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Let's just do a visual hands up if you approve the minutes as amended. For the record, that's all 4 board members currently seated. Approve it. So we have approval of the March minutes as amended. Thank you all. Okay. Is there any correspondence that has been received for items not on the posted agenda?
No, there has not been correspondence received for items that are not on the agenda.
Okay. Brings us to agenda number 7, report from chair. I believe we actually have at least 1, if not 2 applications in, so I will stop my broken record of please put your application in for the 5th C. Hopefully we'll see something come through with that. The other thing I believe, which I heard, is I believe Planning and Building Services has a new director. Is that correct?
Yes, a long-term employee with the county, Julia Krog, has been promoted to the director of the department.
Bravo. I know, Holm, you were with us when Julia spent a fair amount of time with the Design Review Board or the Historical Review Board. And Holm and Holly, if you haven't met her, she's a gem, totally deserves it. So congratulations to, is Acker Krog still, or is it just Julia Krog at this point?
I see Julia Krog on stationery.
Okay.
Right.
We'll give her our commendations and wish her the best of success in the new position. Looking forward to it. That's all I have. So we're going to agenda item number 8, which is public expression. The board welcomes participation in board meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and not more than 10 minutes for a proposed item on a subsequent agenda, so that everyone may be heard. Items of public expression are limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the board, which are not on the posted agenda, and items which have not already been considered by the board. No action will be taken on these comments. If you request to speak under public expression, please call in now. We thank you for your understanding during this difficult time, and thank you for your continued interest. Do we have any requests for telecomment under public expression?
I believe we do not.
Okay, do we want to give this a 3-minute window to let people call in if they want?
That would be a decision of the chair.
I'm gonna, in lieu of our board member Magical having to leave soon, I'm gonna skip that because it should be something that's a basic. And if we don't have any preordained, we'll just let it go. Agenda item number 9, consent calendar. I believe we have no consent calendar items. Okay, which brings us to our first public hearing item, which is 10A, case number MHRB 2021-0019, Raymond. This is a Mendocino Historic Review Board permit requested to install a 43-inch by 54-inch wood directory sign painted yellow, green, and red. The property is listed as local historic resource as the, quote, Eagle Saloon. Have we had any correspondence or telephone calls related to this item?
We have. The property owner called to let me know that the name of the property owner has changed. So the named owner on the application is no longer Lois Jean Raymond as trustee of, it is now, it's Mendo LLC or something like that. Let me see here. It is, just give me a moment, please, because I did want to get this right for the record. Yeah, Judy Steele, who's the property manager, contacted me and said Main Street Mendocino LLC is the current property owner.
Main Street Mendocino?
At Mendo. M-E-N-D-O.
Main Street Mendo LLC.
Right.
Okay. Probably shell company by one of the oligarchs, right? Sorry, couldn't resist. Because you know they have such interesting holdings in on the coastal town of ours, right? Okay. Planner Cherry, can you please present this application?
Certainly. This is a through lot. It fronts both Main Street and Albion Street. And on the Albion Street side is a local restaurant, the Fog Eater Cafe. The business owners of the Fog Eater Cafe have rented another building on the property, and it's located midway between Albion and Main Street. They've had some problems with the cafe, which faces Albion Street, with wayfinding and people being able to find the restaurant, because when they look, it is a Main Street address, so they go to Main Street. For some time, they have attached to an existing 16 square foot sign, a little plaque that directs people through the lot towards Albion Street and the restaurant. With the advent of adding the Fog Bottle Shop, as I mentioned, located midway in the middle part of the lot, they wanted to take down that existing 16-foot sign and replace it. The measurements of the original sign was 43 by 54 inches. And while staff could not find a permit for a sign that size, we think we were able to find an older permit for a directory sign that was 12 square feet in size. So we've talked with the applicant about replacing this sign and our MHRB permit. The sign colors would be very similar to the sign colors for the Fog Eater Cafe. So that pale yellow, the green, the red colors would be on this new directory sign. The applicants are not proposing a sign for the Fog Bottle Shop outside of this directory sign. So there would just be one sign for the Fog Bottle Shop, and it would be this 12-foot, or if the board chooses to approve a larger sign, that size sign. The sign would be located further away from Main Street than the old directory sign. It would be located 36 inches north of the Main Street pedestrian pathway. And this is really so that the sign itself doesn't block people's ability to see the Main Street business, the business closest to Main Street. And the sign, so the sign would both include information about the Fog Bottle Shop, but also that wayfinding information to the restaurant so people can walk through the property up to Albion Street and get to the restaurant. In the staff report, I provided information about freestanding signs, directory signs, reasons that the code gives to grant 2 signs. For example, the restaurant Fog Eater Cafe, if this directory sign is approved, would have a sign on Albion Street for the restaurant, as well as the directory sign. It would have 2 signs. And then I've provided some possible findings depending on what the review board chooses to do. The review board could choose to find that the proposed directory sign and the 16.4 square foot size, which exceeds the sign allotment, they could make a finding that combining the Fog Wine Shop and the directory sign, that they feel that that meets that requirement. Or they could deny the 16.4 square foot proposed sign and approve a conforming sign, which is 12 square feet. And I provided an alternate finding, letter D, lowercase d, if that's what the review board would like to do. Other choices are the review board could just deny the request for the freestanding sign, or they could continue the matter and give direction to the applicant about commercial signs. So I prepared finding A, B, and C. There's an option between C and D, depending on whether the review board wants to approve a conforming sign that's 12 square feet or approve a non-conforming sign, which is larger. And then I provided finding E if the review board chooses to grant a second sign to the Fog Eater Cafe. I've included in the staff report conditions for the review board consideration. They're pretty typical. So the permit for the directory sign would only be valid for as long as the Fog Wine Shop is conducted at this location. If the Fog Wine Shop left operating on this property, then a new permit would be needed. And then the signed copy exemption that's usually granted under the directory sign, staff recommends that it not be applied to this directory sign. And really that's because, as proposed, if you look at the exhibits of the signs, directory signs are usually interchangeable plaque cards, and one 216 square foot plaque is taken out and another one is put in. And in this particular instance, the way that the directory sign is designed, it's basically one large sign and there aren't individual plaques that would be swapped in and out. And I believe there is an image of what they're proposing, maybe the 13th page of the staff report. It's attachment A. I can't quite read the page number. I think page A7. And in that image, there's both the older sign that was taken down and the proposed new sign. So you can see that they're fairly similar in dimension. I just want to reiterate that the 16.4 square feet is non-conforming. And the review board certainly has the option of approving a sign that is conforming at 12 square feet. I hope I haven't been confusing, but if you have questions, I'm here and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have the applicant here for on the line to present their project as well or add any information? Looks like we do.
So it
Okay.
would be both Erica and Nathan. Brooke.
Great. Go ahead, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, great. Yeah, I have any kind of additional information that you want to know about the project. Just to reiterate what Juliana Cherry was saying is that it's very confusing for a business, for both businesses, because we share the same Main Street address. And so the directory sign is completely needed. Needless to say, there's many people that get confused of where the cafe is. And also, as we are in about mid-lot at that location for the bottle shop, it is also hard to find that business as well. I've seen people before just kind of walk right past it, trying to find the actual business. So that's why I think that it's so necessary for us to have this sign up.
Great, thank you. And Erica Schneider's here as well.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey y'all. Yeah, I think Juliana covered most of it, Nathan as well. The only thing I'll say is that the 16 feet versus the 12 feet with the designs that we were trying to work with, it's just really hard to include all that information on the 12-foot size. So I think that's why we were hoping for the slightly larger one.
And of course, there'd be just one sign for the two businesses instead of two signs, correct?
That's right.
Okay, great. If that's all, do we have any public interested in talking to the issue?
We do not.
Okay, thank you, Brooke.
Okay, great. Let's bring it back to the board. Any questions, concerns, thoughts?
No, actually, looking at it, I find the proposed sign sort of more attractive than the existing one. So I'm basically in favor, and I think the size difference is not that significant personally. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, the space, the used space for the sign is the same. It's just that it used to be a hanging placard versus a solid. I think it's quite attractive and clears things up. I mean, it is, I understand the concerns about multiple signs, but it is two businesses. It's an unusual situation sharing that lot. And we want people to be able to find it. So yes, I'm in support.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kapler?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any trouble with the idea of a direct re-sign in that location. I think that would be fine. I guess I would be concerned about the size of the sign. I would prefer to have a 12 square foot sign, which is the requirement, as I understand it, at this point. The older sign, apparently, we don't have a record of it as being approved by the board. And from what I've seen of the pictures, and as I remember it on Main Street, it doesn't take up the full space that is there in the frame. So it took up less than the full 16 square feet, which is what is being proposed now. So I'm okay with the direct re-sign. I'm okay with a sign for Fog Eater Cafe, and but I would prefer it to be done in a smaller size, 12 square feet.
Thank you. quick question to staff and maybe the owners. Is there, and I'm trying to recall, is there any signage on the Fog Eater Cafe itself? I believe there is.
Yes.
There is an existing MHRB permit for the signs at the Fog Eater Cafe.
And
They're
how many,
They're on Albion Street.
how many signs are there?
There's one on Albion Street.
Do we know the dimensions of it?
I believe it's 2 by 3, 6 square feet.
It's a horizontal format. It says Fog
Yeah.
Eater Cafe over
Yeah.
the door, if I remember.
Yes.
So we're actually looking at granting an exemption for not for the 12 square foot. And there's the findings that if we approve this and the bottle shop changes hands, then a new permit must be obtained.
Mhm.
I personally, looking at what was there and what's proposed, it is larger than what is allowed, but overall, if we looked at the 12 square foot directory sign for the two locations, we get 24 square feet, and it looks like we're under the 24 square feet as a total.
Yeah, the rule actually is 12 square feet is allowed. You can't combine the two businesses to make 24 square feet.
Understood. I'm just sort of trying to find some logic to address this, even though logic doesn't always reign. And the fact that it's the same size as what's been there for I don't know how many years, I don't have a big problem. I don't have a lot of heartburn around it. There was something else I was going to, oh, well, that was it. Anyway, any other comments, questions from board members?
Nope.
Okay,
I would be willing to make a motion.
yes, please.
I would move staff's recommendation for an exemption to the size of the sign. Juliana, you find out all the options, but I believe it's the options A through E.
Yeah, and C.
So,
A, B, C,
I see.
not D, and E.
Okay, that's what, so,
Oh, I'm sorry, findings A, B, C, not D, and adding E.
okay,
yes, that is the motion I am making.
Okay.
Thank you
Great.
for clarifying that. So A, B, C, and E, not D.
okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Juliana, roll call vote, please.
Sure. Chair Roth, what is your vote?
Aye.
Holm Kapler, what is your vote?
No.
Board Member Saunders
Aye.
and Board Member Madrigal.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion to approve the non-conforming sign passes with one dissenting vote.
Okay, and just as a side note, I recall there was an A-frame sign that had been in front of the bottle shop that not being a conforming sign that would be removed.
I've talked to the property owner about it and they understand that the A-frame signs are not allowed within the district without an MHRB permit.
Okay, great, thank you. Which brings us with 7.5 minutes. Actually, let's do a matters from the board. Do we have any reports from review board members?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we'll go to 11B. Windows and Doors Subcommittee update. So when was it? It was last Thursday, which was the 31st of March. Holly Madrigal and I, as the MHRB members, convened a meeting an open meeting at the Kelly House Museum. In attendance were architect Debbie Lennox and architect Kelly Grimes, both locals. Kathleen Cameron, who was a prior board member. Karen McGrath, who's the curator for the Kelly House Museum. Ken Taylor, the owner of Joshua Grindle Inn. And Phyllis Cuppage, who was a local resident who all wanted to take part in this. Oh, and I'm sorry,
Wasn't
my
there.
oversight, Ed O'Brien was there as well.
Brian
yeah.
was, but Kathleen Cameron was unable to make it.
Oh, that's right. That's correct. She did send in an email. And I did receive a call from Ed O'Brien, and he did remind me that he was one of the original authors of the guidelines. And knowing that he has quite a history with the village, I welcomed him to join us, which he did, and gave us a nice background to it. So the gist of the meeting, and please, Holly, correct me if I missed anything, but it seemed like the room was kind of split in two. There was one might call the old guard, who wanted to make sure that wooden windows were going to be wooden windows and not clad. And there's another voice, half of the room, which really wanted to see a change or reinterpretation of the original guidelines. So Kelly Grimes brought up, and I've got my binder, which has the Historic Review Board Design Guidelines from 1987. Under item number 1, statement of intent, Kelly Grimes brought to us this concept that the intent of the design guidelines, which this is the 4th paragraph, is to provide a range of design choices which will encourage development that is compatible with the existing or desired character of the area, which will discourage the introduction of incompatible elements of design or building style. Present day designs and materials are encouraged when used in a manner which is compatible with the sense of the past as being preserved. So again, the intent is, when present day designs and materials are encouraged. When looking at the actual code regarding guidelines, and this is under Roman numeral 5, general guidelines, I'm sorry, 7, structural guidelines, building design. Item number 4, windows and doors. The proportions and proportions and relationships between windows and doors and of each the structure as a whole shall be compatible with the architectural style and character of landmark structures and with the surrounding structures within the historic district. Metal or plastic frames are not acceptable. And then it goes on to say shutters should be inconspicuous as possible. Raw aluminum combination, storm windows or doors, and plastic contemporary coverings are not acceptable. I did ask Ed O'Brien, when drafting this, I said, was it your intent as one of the authors of this design, these design guidelines, to have exclusively wood windows? And his response was yes. And I then asked him, I said, well, why didn't you put that in the code instead of metal or plastic frames are not acceptable? And this is what they came up with. So it was a divided room. And I think Holly has about 3 or 4 minutes. I'd love to give you the floor and have you tell us your thoughts.
I don't know. I think that everyone that was in attendance certainly wants to retain the character of Mendocino, that really is a desire. Oh, did we mention the fellow from Joshua Grindle Inn? Ken Taylor was there as well.
Yes.
What Kelly Grimes's point, which I hadn't really thought of it this way before, was just that he couldn't find the thou shalt not have anything other than wood windows, and that he felt that that was rather than being written as such, was actually sort of a norm that had developed over time on the MHRB. We did receive much of it before our meeting, comments on both sides, sort of, you know, people who are supportive of the wood window situation. One thing that was brought up that I don't know if this board is aware of, I was under the impression that wood windows are always more expensive, you know, certainly if they're custom, and actually Deborah Lennox was saying that that's not always the case, that there are times in which the metal clad wood windows are actually more expensive. I thought that was interesting. But what was interesting about Kelly's interpretation is that it says right there on the top of the guidelines that that the MHRB should be encouraged to sort of flex with modern materials as long as they stay in compliance with the look and character of the building. So that was an interesting thing to think about. He's of the opinion that it really should be each individual permit, you know, that we see. In this instance, would a metal clad, you know, so his example was the building behind Dick's Place. He thinks that that would be, in that instance, it does not alter the historical character of the building to have metal clad wood windows, because they were able to find some that would fit. And so his point was just, his concern was around the rigidity of how this has been interpreted over time, which I thought that was interesting. I don't think anyone in that meeting is suggesting that we go against the guidelines, which says no raw, no raw aluminum windows. But yeah, there seemed to be a desire from people in the room potentially to allow for updating, but there has been a history of opening that can of worms and apparently it not working out at the Board of Supervisors level. And so there was a lot of frustration around that. Like, we don't want to come up with all these recommendations. Like, now we should allow these other things if in fact they wouldn't be adopted. And Ed O'Brien is of the opinion that the siding is going to be an issue coming forward, the wood siding on buildings, that is required to be wood right now, you know, for good reason, but that as that material becomes less and less available, that's sort of the challenge, is that as modern materials become available, Kelly Grimes's opinion is that our guidelines already allow for that. So that was an interesting, I don't know, I hadn't really thought of it that way before. I didn't feel like we left with a clear,
No.
which we really, both Ian and I would have loved to have come out with, like, this is going to be our recommendation to the board, but I think we were sort of unable to meet that, unfortunately.
It's kind of like a tossed salad, a little bit of everything. So Holly, I know you need to go. If you have a chance to pop back, please do. I think we're going to be at this for a bit. So
Yes, I will.
Good luck, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. So
It'll be on the record.
Recording. Okay.
Thanks. Okay. So that's the subcommittee report back. We're going to open up the public comment. I know that we have 4 different letters that have been submitted and posted to the website. Is Juliana, you still there?
Hi.
Do you want to take a whack? Is it probably worth reading each of them?
If you'd like, I'll read them into the record.
Would you please?
Sure. All right, I'll start with Phyllis Cuppage. She sent 2 emails. Let's see here. All right, so she wrote, MHRB members and subcommittee, I've been a resident in Mendocino for 11 years and have been through the MHRB review process twice. In 2011, I replaced all my windows with Marvin wood windows. I've been so happy with them and have not needed to repaint after 11 years. Regarding cost, I understand that wood windows are more expensive, especially if you consider the initial painting labor cost. However, I didn't feel like the majority of the residents are affected by the extra cost, especially the ones paying today's prices for homes. When you purchase a home here, you know or should know the codes, etc., of living in a historic district. The fact that Kelly Grimes stated in the March MHRB meeting that he can spot an illegally installed clad window says it all. There is a difference in looks. Here's some cons of aluminum clad windows. Poor insulator. Aluminum doesn't hold in heat as well as other materials. Condensation, moisture, or even frost can form inside aluminum frame windows, leading to problems. If an aluminum clad window receives damage, it must be repaired by replacing the entire sash of the window or full unit replacement. One of the board members in the March meeting stated that possibly after 20 years, the windows have to be pulled out and repowder coated. How will that be enforced when they fail? There are limited colors available. Are they historic colors? Will residents paint over the aluminum over time? I'm sure there are different qualities of these windows, therefore what requirements can be enforced. Wood windows are more energy efficient. It may take extra effort on the homeowner's part, but wood windows are known for their longevity. Once this change is made, there is no turning back. What will be next? How about replacing the picket fences with plastic? Very expensive to maintain all those pickets. It's the same argument. Lastly, what's the hurry? One of the board members said we need to act on this quickly so it doesn't delay the homeowner in Albion wanting aluminum clad windows. This is not a reason to make such an important change in a long-standing historical feature, nor should it be the board's interpretation. Sincerely, Phyllis Cuppage, March 21st. We also received comments from Tom Thompson on March 22nd.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's a second part to that.
Yeah, this particular PDF that I've opened doesn't have her second part. I'll have to open that a little bit later.
I can do it real quick.
Okay.
It's sent on March 22nd, 11:20 a.m. with Windows. MHRB, one more comment from Phyllis Cuppage. I also want to mention that another alternative to aluminum clad windows is to have them made locally. When I replaced my triple window set upstairs, I hired a local carpenter to make it exactly as the original with thermal glass. Another neighbor gave me the idea after replacing 2 windows. Yes, it was pretty pricey, but so worth it. We're so lucky to have many talented carpenters on the coast, plus it puts money into our local economy.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you. So on March 22nd, Tom Thompson sent some comments. MHRB members Roth, Kapler, Madrigal, and Saunders, consideration of non-wood windows in the Mendocino Historic District. I am Tom Thompson, architect, and have owned property in the town of Mendocino since 1997. Our house and its supporting guest house were built in 2009 and 2014, respectively. It is an honor to have built these buildings that conform to the historic principles outlined in the MHRB guidelines. It is a unique opportunity to honor the significant local history of the California coast, which originated in harvesting wood from local forest. This history continues today as sustainable forestry management has enhanced the viability of our forests. It is in this sense of history that I would recommend you continue the use of wood windows as a necessary element of building construction. It makes us special. As an architect, I have appeared before the MHRB board on many occasions. I find the restrictions are engaging and require a creativity that is extraordinary. thereby extending the creativity of an architect's efforts while supporting the common concerns of Mendocino's residents. Having been a licensed architect since 1972 in multiple states, and prior to that worked in offices for many years, I have had experience with many building types and conditions. I believe this experience gives me an overview of building materials, situations, and conditions which I can offer you in this decision. I would suggest that the inclusion of metal windows is not consistent with our shared history. Wood is the reason we exist, and that should be honored in any form possible. Adherence to MHRB regulations is one of the agreements that is part of the condition of buying into Mendocino community. It protects all of us from unfortunate architectural and environmental intrusions. Wood windows have a sense of quality that ordinariness of metal windows do not. They are associated with cheap building techniques, including subdivisions and other such mass housing efforts. Metal windows may be cheaper, but their quality is quite often low and not able to sustain the punishing climate we experience. Replacing or repainting requires significant cost. My experience with our windows has been excellent. We have a south-facing facade on each building with a bank of windows. The units are thermal and have withstood the demands of weather for the last 12 years without being compromised. They are also an engaging interior element, solidly framing our wonderful views. There are also many other substantial technical and aesthetic reasons which in balance favor wood over metal windows, which you have undoubtedly explored in your consideration of the significant change in MHRB regulations. Cost should not be a guiding principle. Quality and sustaining our unique history ought to be the motivation. This protects all of the residents who reside here for its unique environmental atmosphere, significant expressed in the buildings we all visually share. I would ask that you maintain the wood window conditions which will sustain the unique quality of our community. Thank you for your consideration, Tom Thompson.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think there's one or two more comments.
We have two more. Can you access them?
Yeah, I have, let's see, I've done Phyllis and I've done Tom. There's Wendy Roberts. I'll read Wendy Roberts. Okay. Let's see here.
It's a long one.
Yeah. On March 10th, MHRB members, in consideration of I think this one is also Tom Thompson. No, it's Wendy. Okay, same subject line now. Consideration of non-wood windows in historic district. While my husband and I no longer have the pleasure of being the owners and residents of an historic home in Mendocino, my thoughts regarding non-wood windows are based on projects I have reviewed during my 6 years on the MHRB and 30 plus years of stewardship of our own 1880s home and a reconstructed water tower, as well as the garage we added to the property. Based on my own experiences and on projects I followed over 3 decades, I urge you to move beyond the position that only wood is good and to consider other relevant factors, including design. Nobody wants to see shiny aluminum frames or plastic grids on buildings in the historic district. That's not what your committee is about. Historic windows are noteworthy for their proportions and for their narrow muttons and wide sills. Leading window companies now offer products that are designed to replicate these original features for use in the historic buildings. Anderson, Pella, Marvin, and Milgard are among the companies that can provide examples of award-winning installations of their windows in national historic districts. Your committee could make great contribution by collecting literature, including descriptions of historic projects from a wide range of manufacturers who produce windows with design features appropriate for use in historic buildings. Energy conservation. Dual pane windows play a role in reducing the energy demands of historic buildings, but an application for window replacement might also include a checklist for owners to use to assess property for other steps for weatherproofing and or insulation. Such energy audits are recommended in national guidelines for those considering window replacement. Environmental sustainability, durability, cost. While it is true that regularly maintained historic windows built of virgin timber can be long-lived, that is much less true given reformulation of today's paints to meet EPA and health guidelines. Windows constructed of today's lower quality wood and painted with water-based paints are especially vulnerable to damp coastal weather. Deteriorated, leaking windows are stealth destroyers of the surrounding walls. After fewer than a dozen years, our bills for repair and replacement of just a few of our windows came to around $15,000. Many of today's all wood windows, especially on exposed southern walls, will be ready for landfill within a decade. Alternative materials. The current MHRB guidelines include a statement that they are not intending to preclude the use of modern materials. This has been applied to allow aluminum gutters in place of less effective redwood or vastly more expensive and non-historic copper. It has also allowed composite roofing materials in place of wood shakes when the latter became prohibitively expensive and less desirable due to poorer wood quality and toxic treatments for fireproofing. Since the issue has been raised by others, I will note that there has been no apparent decline in property values as a result of these substitutions. It is now possible to purchase vinyl or aluminum clad windows and windows made of highly durable fiberglass that are designed for historic buildings and that carry substantial warranties. Not all brands are created equal, but as a whole, these units can be counted on for useful lifespans far exceeding those of today's all wood windows. It would be highly useful were your committee members to work with staff to research available options and to conduct a survey of local builders to gain their wisdom concerning the availability and durability of various products. I have no doubt that providing such reference materials to potential applicants would be greatly appreciated. In closing, I want to thank you for your service to the MHRB. I empathize with your challenges and appreciate your willingness to invest in our very precious community. Wendy Roberts. I just want to check to see if I've received any messages on this topic while we're talking, and I'll also open up that last comment to read. Just take me a minute.
So the last one is from Rick Sachs, and I believe that was for last meeting. So if we can,
and it's not relating to Windows.
no, so if we can pull that off of the website, that'd be great.
Well, it is a public comment that was received, which is why it's up there, but it's not relating to the wood windows.
Gotcha.
So that is all of the public comments that were submitted in writing that we received.
Okay, thank you for helping out with that. Do you have any telecommenters that have submitted their form and are waiting online?
We do not.
Okay.
Oh, it's
Shocking. No? Ishvi. So Ishvi, welcome. Please state your name for the record. Public comments limited to 3 minutes per person. Please address their comments to myself, the chair, and refrain from using profanity or engaging in conversation with members or the audience or staff. And Juliana will be announced when you have 30 seconds remaining. Please go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. I would like to speak to the wood window, wood siding debate. I've been a building contractor for many years in Mendocino. I've built a whole lot of wooden windows over the years. I I would like to say that it is very, very difficult now to source the quality of wood necessary to build wooden windows that will be long lasting. And I think it's irresponsible for us as a town to continue to need to use old growth redwood and cedar, as these products are diminishing the planet. Clad windows come in all different varieties and sizes, shapes, and forms. And as a historical review board, you will be able to review the application and look for mullion detailing, paint color, etc., that does match the historical nature of our town. I think some people will still continue to use wooden windows because it will be easier to replace a sash than the entire frame. But when you encounter wooden windows that are in such a deteriorated form that people are having to replace the entire sash and frame, I think it absolutely makes sense for us to allow them to use modern windows such as Pella or Lowen, which do make true divided light mullion windows that most people are not going to be able to tell the difference unless they get very, very close to the window. And even then, they'll be hard pressed at times to tell the difference between that and a wooden window. The siding issue becomes a little more difficult because there aren't very many replacements that look like wooden siding. You're pretty much limited to like an artisan series of hardy plank at this point on the market. But again, relying on wooden siding in an age of disappearing trees is certainly something that we're going to be challenged with. So I think that we should definitely open the interpretation up to allow for modern building materials that can still meet the aesthetic quality that we're looking for in the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ish. We appreciate it. Do we have anyone else in the wings?
We do
Brooke is
not.
shaking her head.
We do not.
Okay. So we're going to close public comment. Comments from our board members.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of multifaceted discussion here we're having. I think that, I mean, my objective, and I think everybody else's, is to keep the aesthetic of the town in a historic framework. So nobody's looking at, you know, brightly clad aluminum frame windows or tatty plastic ones. What was interesting in the discussion was it seems it's possible to have a wood window that's terrible, even though it's a wood window, and it also seems possible to have a clad window that's terrible, even though it's clad. So I think our main objective should be to try and make sure that the look of the window fits in with the historic nature of the town. Then you come to the question of, that's one facet. Then you come to the question of longevity. And I'm not sure that's something we necessarily address. That's more a decision for the architect and the homeowner as to what happens 10 or 20 years from now. I mean, if I thought that some of the wood or some of the clad windows deteriorated, you know, in 6 months, that would be a different discussion. So to some extent, that's more a homeowner's decision. And I think likewise with the sort of environmental aspect, and there were two things that were said that were sort of in opposition in a sense. I'm not saying they're you know, butting heads, but one is, hey, we're using old growth redwood and maybe we shouldn't because there isn't much left. And the other is, you know, that's a natural material and we should encourage its use because of the local labor and artisans and having those skills available. And again, I'm inclined to think that's really a personal decision for the homeowner, rather than us impose some sort of, I'm not sure, the environmental outlook on life on the homeowner. So I think on balance, I come down on the side that says if the window is indistinguishable from a wood window, and if we're convinced that the materials are such that it's has longevity, I would not object to that. And I would actually apply some of those same rules to wooden windows, in the sense that if somebody comes up with a wooden window that doesn't fit in with the historic aesthetic, or which is cheaply made and is going to disintegrate in a short period of time, I wouldn't be too happy with that either. So I think the guidelines do need a refresh along those lines. And I think that I like the idea of somewhere, and I'm not sure where it would be, giving people information on the options that are available, because we've seen lots of different options put forward, some of which have given a great deal of thought to some of the topics that have been raised, like condensation, life, what do you do when it fails, both on the wooden window side and on the artificial wood, or the clad window side. So I think the guidelines do need some refreshing to allow or totally wood windows. But I think that also goes along with making sure that even the wooden windows are viable, and that people understand that both are acceptable. Long talk, sorry. That's
that's great. Thank you for your thoughts. And before I hand it over to Vice Chair Kapler, I just want to point out for all of our edification to board members as well as the public, we weren't proposing to alter the guidelines, but rather interpret them. That being said, to alter the guidelines would be like going through an act of Congress. What was brought up to us, I believe both Ed O'Brien and Deborah Lennox were both on a committee some not too distant years ago that took a stab at rewriting the guidelines. Spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, only to have them thrown out by the Board of Supervisors. So basically there's a lot of raw open wounds still left behind on that process. So I think if it is our desire to provide interpretation via memo, I think that would be one way to go, or we could just let it stand. So I just want to make that clarification that we're not going to change the guidelines, but the best we can do is if we want to alter them, we can provide an interpretation. That being said, Vice Chair Kapler, what's your thoughts?
Let me comment on that. Yeah, I just had a comment, and I probably didn't say what I said very well, but it is obvious from some of the public comment that we got that people think that we are going to change the guidelines. If you read,
correct, and that's I want to clarify that we're not.
That's a really good clarification. I appreciate it.
We're not going to change the guidelines. The best we can do is interpret them. And as I said at the last meeting, I would rather put a foot forward consciously to do an interpretation rather than granting exceptions that become the rule. So, Vice Chair Kapler, what's your brain's hand?
Thank you. Well, I'm a little confused because I thought this was supposed to be just sort of an update of where this discussion is, and that I didn't think we were intending to make a final decision on this question today, especially.
I'm going to interrupt you, but we cannot make a decision because it's not set up as a decision to be made. It's not an action item. Okay. What I was hoping to get out of this was to hear the board members and their thoughts, and for us all as a group to propose next steps. And if it is, I heard from board member Saunders and others that maybe one position, similar to what we did with the paint colors, the historic paint colors, maybe we call out certain manufacturers and certain windows that would be preferred or not.
Mhm.
We could drop the whole thing. We could ask staff to generate a memorandum. We could craft one ourselves and pass it to staff. But I think what I was hoping was that rather than every meeting having to decide whether or not we're going to go aluminum clad or not, that we actually step ahead of the process and provide some guidance to applicants.
Okay. Well, that's fine with me. Obviously we've got a problem here because there's a conflict in the guidelines. On the one hand, you have a statement of intent that says present day designs and materials are encouraged when used in a manner which is compatible with the sense of the past that is being preserved. And on the other hand, we have a fairly categoric statement with regard to windows and doors that says metal or plastic frames are not acceptable. So there's a clear conflict that exists. And, I think it's incumbent on us to try and resolve the matter to some extent. Yes, I understand that, if we do this on a case-by-case basis, I'm not sure if we can get away from case-by-case. I think it would be hard to actually draft a memo that specifically says, here's what would be acceptable and here's what wouldn't be acceptable. I can see us saying we could look at certain recommended historic windows and frames that companies have developed that are options for you to consider. But I think in the end, wouldn't the board still have to look at the actual proposal and the building and say, yes, we can agree to this or we can't?
Well stated. And I'll throw in my 2 cents. For the advance meeting for the March meeting, Kelly Grimes, local architect, was present for a showing of the house, a showing of the proposal for the house behind Dick's Place. After that, he brought us downtown for those who wanted to see, and that was a couple of planning building staff and myself. And we went to, I'm looking at a map on my other computer here, the building on the corner of Lansing and Ukiah on the northeast side. It has Good Life Cafe, Mendocino Gems, Scott Roat Realty. And he pointed out a number of windows that were replaced in recent years that were not wood windows.
Mm-hmm.
And what it comes down to, which has been biting us in the derriere for quite some time, is code enforcement. So, as with everything else, you can either ask for permission or
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. And more often than not, it's asking for forgiveness than permission, which is a shame. And I have to say that I appreciate Kelly Grimes and his approach. He's always asking for permission and not forgiveness. So I really respect that. That being said, I saw the aluminum clad window that Grover Wickersham had procured for the Blair House, his property. I was very underwhelmed. I was looking at it, up close and personal, but it had gaps between the aluminum cladding and the different pieces, and it seemed to me that seemed to me that you could definitely tell it's not a wooden window. On the other hand, it wasn't until Kelly pointed out the windows on that building on Lansing and Ukiah that I actually noticed that those weren't wood windows. It's a 6.5 dozen or the other. Holm, I really appreciate your concept of, I don't know that we can make a policy decision at this point. I appreciate the concept that modern materials are supported, suggested. I don't know that we're there yet. And I think it's still on a case-by-case basis where we need to actually see what we're approving.
Mhm.
There's good quality wood windows and there are lousy quality wood windows. There's good quality replacements. If not now, there will be in the near future, new materials, aluminum clad. I still have a couple misgivings, and this was what Grover Wickersham had brought up that I had quoted in our March meeting, which was the salt air and the climate on the coast will pit and, you know, make these beautiful, quote, beautiful aluminum clad windows not so beautiful, you know, in 20, 25 years. Grover's approach is he wants to put his heart and soul and his wallet into that beautiful house that we call the Blair House. And he wants to be there and as an example of the way things should be for years to come. His point was that when the aluminum clad gets pitted, you have to remove the entire window and have it re-powder coated if that's possible, as opposed to a wood window that could be just repainted every 15 to 20 years. I would be willing to try to gather some information on aluminum clad windows and see if I can get some details of them and bring that back for the next meeting. But I kind of think, even though we're being beat up by applicants to try to open up things, I'm not sure that we're there yet in the technology to give us what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of in the camp of case by case basis at this point.
Yeah, I think that's where I am too. I'm not unalterably opposed to windows that are not completely wooden windows that are aluminum clad, and you know, I think Wendy Roberts listed a number of firms and options, and apparently there are other historic districts that have accepted these kinds of windows. So I think it might be possible, but yeah, I think I'm coming down on a case-by-case basis also. I mean, we're in a situation here where, you know, if we look at roofing shingles, we're looking at gutters, these are all materials that are, you know, not the materials that were used here 100 years ago. And we seem to have accepted that in those cases. So I'm not unalterably opposed to non-wooden windows, but I really would like to see the proposals and see if they really look like windows that belong in a historic house.
Oh, can I make one other comment back on my?
Absolutely, please. Help muddy the waters a little more, please.
Yeah, I'm good at that. I spent my life doing that. So I kind of agree, given that we're not going to embark on the charge of the hill of rewriting the guidelines, that it probably is going to end up on a case-by-case basis. And I also agree, you know, that the technology has to be there. But I also think that when we look on a case-by-case basis, we should look at the wooden windows, because I think, you know, and I can't remember which of the public comment it was, but I know from some of the building I've been trying to do around here that the traditional materials are really hard to get, even if you want wood. And I think when we look at the wood windows, we should also make sure that not only are they fitting the historic sort of look of the place, but they also are made of a material that isn't going to fall apart in a few years, because there are, as you said, there are bad wooden windows and good wooden windows, and there are bad clad windows, and hopefully one day, if they're not there now, there'll be good clad windows. So I think we need to consider both sides of that when we look. Just because someone comes up and says, I'm making my windows out of wood, doesn't automatically make it good. So that's my add-on comment, I guess.
So, and I know I've mentioned this at prior meetings. Back in the day, I was on, used to live in Marin County, and I was in Fairfax, and we had storyboards. And on the storyboard, you'd have a paint chip big enough so you can actually see what it's going to look like. You'd have a specimen of the siding, the roofing material, anything that was of significance to the design. And I always appreciate that, because you could actually, see what was being proposed and the quality thereof. I don't know if, and Juliana could probably talk to this, but I don't know if there's ever been a requirement to have storyboards for renovations or new construction, but especially when we're talking about use of new materials that is recommended in the design guidelines, but that conforms to the aesthetic of the village. I would love to see a requirement that we actually have some sort of a storyboard for any remodel and new construction, so we can test the quality. And I mean, I really appreciate the fact that Grover, for the Blair House, ordered a window. I mean, that's some extra cost that he went through, but I got to go up and look at it, and I was underwhelmed. So maybe in terms of these types of discussions going forth, I don't know what it would take to require a storyboard for submittal of a proposal for MHRB. Please.
So that sounds like a great idea. I too have oddly sat on a historic board myself, and storyboards were a part of that presentation to the board, and I really did like that. It is not a requirement for an application in this historic district, so we can ask applicants to do that, but it's not a requirement. Thinking back to when we used to meet in person, there was that lovely cork board on the wall, and we would put the plan sheets up on the wall so people could look at them. Today, we can easily get tear sheets from manufacturers, and they're often incorporated into the application material that you get. You get a small image of what the exterior lamp might look like, or the window. I'd like to add that staff has been asking the review board to perhaps support the concept of having applicants provide a cataloging of what is the architectural features of the building. So when they're proposing to change an architectural feature like the window, we have information about the existing wood windows, and we can compare that to what they're proposing to change. And the review board can decide whether the change to the existing wood windows is consistent with the features of that particular resource, and whether those particular features are important to telling the story about that resource. I think that's, in addition to a storyboard, something for the review board to consider, asking applicants to do that cataloging of the architectural features in a meaningful way.
I think that'd be wonderful. And whatever we can do to support you in requiring that, I think it'd be fabulous. Any other thoughts, comments?
Staff is here to listen. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Ellen or Holm, anything else to add, or we're just
No,
gonna?
just what do we do next, I guess, is the question.
I think if one direction the staff could be encourage applicants to provide the historical story, what you're going to be providing, and encourage the use of storyboards. At this point, I don't think that we're at the point where we can trust technology. I think we need to stick with the case-by-case basis for materials, but I think we're going to be running into questions going forward about aluminum clad windows, non-wood siding, and what have you. So I think it's just it's as time progresses, and I mean, we got this great Jackson State demonstration forest, which they're supposed to be doing, sustainable harvesting, and hopefully we can have beautiful redwoods forever and incorporate that into our materials. But I'm just not sure that it's going to, we're going to have to look at alternatives. And I think we just need to impress upon the public who are putting in applications to give us enough information where we can stand our ground and say no if it doesn't look right. Either lower quality wood windows or aluminum clad that just don't look right, whatever it is. But I think with materials, we just need to give enough information from the applicant to be able to approve or deny the application based upon the information we give. And I'm not so excited about being told that it's a standing seam metal roof without actually seeing a piece of what they're talking about. Or maybe it's, a aluminum clad window without actually getting something that's a little more definitive as to what it looks like. So at this point, I think that we've put it on the docket. We've heard it, even by the public. And I think that if the public wants us to take further action other than just on a case-by-case basis, they can come forward and request that action under public hearing.
I think one of the things, I like the idea that Juliana put forward about the side-by-side comparisons of old and new, especially with regard to windows. And it seems to me we could have ask applicants to provide, whenever they're proposing a change to windows or building a new building with new windows, whether the windows they're proposing are wood or not, that they provide us with as much detailed information, brochures or whatever, with regard to what they're proposing, so that we can make an informed decision.
In which case, we got to be able to be willing to deny applications if they don't come forth, or not deny, but continue applications that don't give us enough information to make a educated decision.
Yeah, that's right.
Alan?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that this last set of discussions has been really educational, because you've got to have a wooden window. Well, I think that's insufficient data, and no, you can have a clad window is insufficient data as well. I mean, I think the more we get educated, the more intelligent our decisions will be. And I guess if as much information is out there, we can get either from the applicant or from staff to educate, so we're asking the right questions, would be a benefit. So yeah, I think we just need as much information as we can when we make a decision, and we shouldn't be locked in one way or the other.
I like it. Okay. I think we've done beating this dead horse for now.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to go to our next item, which is 12A, matters from staff, and I see none. Is that correct?
That is correct. I am just taking a moment to check because I believe we have not received any applications that we would schedule for May. So if you give me a moment, I can give you a firmer answer on whether there would be the need to schedule something for May. While I do that, I just want to say, I think I'm hearing on the board discussion item that they do not want to have the windows and doors be a standing discussion item for the next meeting.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
And within the notes, I think you want to reflect that we, after thorough discussion, we decided that at this point, we will be reviewing proposals on a case-by-case basis, that we encourage applicants to give us more information that we need, enough to make a thorough decision. Otherwise, they will risk the opportunity for us to continue the item until they can get us that information.
Okay. All right. I can pass that along to applicants as well.
Okay.
I have taken a moment and I do not see that we've received any applications that we would schedule for May. So it's likely the next meeting will be in June.
Okay. The only thought I have was with regard to the minutes from March. 12B was that Historic Preservation Month was April 22, which is this month. So don't we, is it every other year that we vote on? Is this every other year or is this the year?
Next year.
Next year. Okay. So make a reminder that Historic Preservation Month is in April, and that next April, I guess March, we'll be taking nominations for historic buildings that are worth noting. And we still have to, at some point, distribute the 2 awards that we were going to do in person when we went back to in-person meetings from last year.
Right, right.
Okay. So at this point, it is 3:30 in the afternoon, only an hour and a half into it. That's not so bad. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Got all 3 of us, raise your hands. This meeting of the MHRB in April of 2020 is now officially adjourned at 3:31. Thank you all. See you in June.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.